I've just made a list of guys that could take out your favorite fighter with ease. That's right, I'm talking about nightmare matchups, guys. And to make things interesting, I've added some caveats to some of these potential matchups, meaning that not all of them would be nightmare matchups if you were to just make them right now, but in a particular circumstance, it would be a one-sided beatdown. It would be one-way traffic all the way through. And that's what we're going to discuss today. And without further ado, let's just get into it. No more time to waste. The first nightmare matchup is Khamzat Chimaev for Ciryl Adesanya on any day of the week. That's right, 365 days a year. I believe that Khamzat Chimaev is running across the octagon, dunking Ciryl Adesanya on his head, sinking in the hooks, and taking his neck for a ride. And I can't wait to see it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not a massive fan of Khamzat Chimaev anymore, just because it's kind of just pissing me off to see him talk from the sidelines and not actually fight. It's getting a little bit annoying. And I'm not the biggest fan of Adesanya, though. So I wouldn't mind seeing him get a real test. But that's the issue. That's what I'm really getting at. This is a real test. You know what I mean? This is not mediocre Marvin Vettori shooting a plotty double leg takedown. Marvin Vettori was able to take Adesanya down a couple of times too. Like, Adesanya's gotten taken down 40 times. So the question is not, can Khamzat take him down? The question is, what can he do with it? And you're looking at the guys that have taken Adesanya down. We're looking at Marvin. We're looking at Whittaker, who's never really proven to have a submission game or to be able to have offense on the ground either. And the last guy that actually was able to do damage on the ground that Adesanya fought beat him, which was Jan Blachowicz. And before that, it was Derek Brunson. Now, credit to Adesanya, he destroyed Derek Brunson, but unlike Brunson, Khamzat Chimaev is fast and he can be technical, and he's just way better on the feet than Derek Brunson. So it's not like Adesanya just doesn't have to worry about anything coming in his direction on the feet, because Khamzat Chimaev has that threat of the takedown. That's going to open up strikes of his own. And just based on the style, I don't even think there's going to be many striking exchanges. I think Khamzat just runs across the octagon and just goes buck wild for the takedown. And Adesanya is in a world of trouble once it gets there. You know what I mean? He's never faced anything like Khamzat Chimaev on the ground. And there's also a skill advantage that guys have when they move up a weight class. And Khamzat Chimaev is used to fighting faster guys. And I think he's going to get this one, man. He's never not destroyed anyone on the ground that wasn't Gilbert Burns. You know what I mean? And I think that Adesanya is just, he wouldn't be ready for it. And he's not like a short, stubby guy like Volkanovski that's facing a grappler that can use that build to scramble up to their feet. Adesanya's got that long, lanky build, and he's got a long neck, and I think that's perfect for a guy like Khamzat Chimaev. I just don't think the UFC's in any rush to make this fight, though, and I think that the MMA gods are too cruel to allow us to see this. But once again, if you're an Adesanya fan, you do not want him fighting Khamzat Chimaev at all. But you know who you do want him to fight? Robert Whittaker or Dricus du Plessis at UFC 293, which is early September, because we are probably going to see a old, decrepit, not old, but you're going to see a banged up, partially injured, and overtrained version of either of these guys fighting Ciryl Adesanya. Adesanya just basically scraped by a guy that was supposed to knock him out, and he's in the clear. The UFC is trying to match him up with the worst version of Robert Whittaker that they can muster, which is a Robert Whittaker that would be fighting 2 months prior. And that's kind of the issue here. Even if Whittaker gets past du Plessis, unless he just finishes him in the first exchange, he's still going to be a little bit banged up from that training camp. And we saw what that did to a guy like Gilbert Burns, fighting too often. He's probably putting in some serious work to make sure he puts a stamp on Dricus du Plessis so we can earn that title shot. But I could just see him wheeling out to the press conference at UFC 293, injured with a cast on. You know, Dana White saying this is going to be a competitive fight. He's got all the fucking Australian fans pressuring him to fight Izzy. You know what I mean? And we saw that Izzy was able to get into his head last time. And Izzy's going to be pressuring Whittaker to show up to UFC 293 because he's going to be like, bro, give the fans what they want. You're depriving the fans from a good fight. And I could just see the fans pressuring Whittaker to show up too. Hey man, you almost got him last time, bro. This is the moment. This is it. You cannot deprive us from this fight. We're all buying tickets to see. We're just gonna see Adesanya basically beat up like an overtrained Whittaker. You know what I mean? And if it's Dricus, It's like, come on, that couldn't get any easier. Again, this is just a perfect situation for Israel Adesanya to get himself a good win over a couple of guys that are overtrained, that just spent the last few months, beating themselves up in the gym and beating themselves up in the octagon. So that now you have like them crawling to the octagon, barely making it to UFC 293 in shambles. And Adesanya is there, perfectly ready with the perfect training camp. Yeah, big advantage to Israel Adesanya. Whittaker is getting screwed. Merab Dvalishvili for Cory Sandhagen and Sean O'Malley. Any of these long-rangey strikers, man, they're kind of screwed against Merab. Merab Dvalishvili just won't let you settle. There's just nothing you can do to set up your strikes, to set up your attacks, to be that crafty guy that sits on the outside when you have Merab Dvalishvili spamming 50 takedowns around, spamming combinations, spamming feints, and fighting like a fast twitch, explosive fighter for 25 minutes straight. There's no one else in the UFC that can be fast twitch for 25 minutes. We have guys like Colby Covington that have phenomenal cardio, but they're not like fast twitch, jittery all over the place. I just don't think Cory Sandhagen or Sean O'Malley could deal with that, man. They'd get drowned in the first round. You know what I mean? Cory Sandhagen would not be able to set things up as the fight progresses, and Merab Dvalishvili just doesn't tire out. And if this is a 5-rounder, you may as well kiss O'Malley's career goodbye, because he's not coming back after getting embarrassed the way he would get embarrassed by Merab Dvalishvili. And Cory Sandhagen, it would just be sad to see such a tough, gritty guy, so skilled, get just embarrassed and drowned by Merab Dvalishvili's cardio. And again, it's like, it's really just the cardio and the pace. He doesn't have these crazy skills. He's not going to finish you on the ground. You know what I mean? He's not going to hurt you on the feet. But he just gets you into this constant grind of reacting to everything that he does and not actually imposing your will on him. So the people that are going to beat Merab are like guys that are short and compact and have a lot of power and that can fuck him up on the feet. Or someone like Aljamain Sterling that's really good with their submissions off of their back and also able to out-scramble you when you take them down to get your back. Justin Gaethje versus anyone with a blue belt. That's right. If you have a blue belt, if you've been training in jiu-jitsu for a couple of weeks, you can go out there and destroy Justin Gaethje. All jokes aside, I'm talking about the grapplers in this division. A Gamrot, an Arman Tsarukyan, a guy like Beneil Dariush. These guys are going to be nightmares for Justin Gaethje every time. And if you're going to bring up the takedown defense of Gaethje, like, who the fuck has he really defended takedowns from? Dustin Poirier? I didn't know Dustin was trying to take this man down. Or what, are you going to bring up Michael Johnson? Oh yeah, Michael Johnson was threatening that takedown. Like, no. When people have wanted to take Justin down, they've done it. The guy was taken down and twisted into a pretzel against Khabib on the first try. And I understand Arman and Gamrot and Beneil Dariush might not be on the same level as Khabib, but that just means that maybe they won't submit him in 15 seconds. Maybe it'll take them a minute. A guy like Michael Chandler picked Justin Gaethje up and tossed him on his head. Like, I don't think he has this amazing takedown defense. Charles Oliveira took him down, got him in a clinch, pulled guard and pulled Gaethje to the ground. And Gaethje got up to his feet. But it's like, these are guys that are going to take Gaethje down and put him on his back. And on his back, he is like a turtle without the shell. He is completely and utterly rendered to being useless. Maybe not, all right? Justin Gaethje's not useless down there. And again, the blue belt thing is a bit of a joke. I don't think that Dustin Poirier could just wrap a submission over Justin Gaethje easily. I think that's actually a possibility for their next fight. I think if Dustin gets Gaethje down, it's a world of trouble for Justin Gaethje. But these are guys that will take him down. And because Gaethje is so bad with the submission defense, I think they would expose him badly and wrap up a sub easily. Next up, we have Max Holloway versus 5'8 to 5'10 run-of-the-mill ranked guys. This is like the perfect build for a quintessential Max Holloway beatdown. Look at what he did to Calvin Kattar. Now, Calvin Kattar's listed at 5'11. I just want to put that out there, but he's not actually 5'11. Max is 5'11, and Max looked like he was 2 or 3 inches taller than Calvin Kattar in the octagon. Brian Ortega's 5'8, Korean Zombie's 5'9, and Arnold Allen is 5'8. And so, like, these are the perfect builds for Max Holloway to make a canvas out of, with pure and utter volume and ferocity on the feet. These are the guys that Max Holloway cleans out pretty much every time. Max struggles with a guy like Yair Rodriguez, who is truly like 5'11", long, rangy, can strike at range, has high output, or a Volkanovski that's short, that's built like a tank, that's going to be hard to find on the feet. He didn't even have the best performance against Frankie Edgar, and Frankie Edgar is like a short guy that's just hard to reach on the feet. These are the guys that Max Holloway is going to beat fairly easily every single time. And what we're about to see when he fights Korean Zombie is going to be horrific. Okay, this one's going to piss a lot of you guys off. I think that Merab is taking out Max, bro. I really do. Like, Max is pillow hands, and if you're going to beat this guy, you have to be built like a fucking brick wall. You basically have to be someone like Song Yadong. Or, as I mentioned, maybe an Aljamain Sterling that could latch up a submission. I don't think that Max's submission game is that gnarly. And I don't think he's got the power to knock a guy like Merab out. He would have to put on a load of volume on the chin of Merab, and Merab just doesn't allow you to get that going. Max Holloway needs that avalanche. He needs that really solid 2 or 3 minutes to start finding your chin. He needs to start stringing combinations together, and that is so hard to do against the machine, who's constantly feinting, who's constantly shooting takedowns. Just bumping into Max Holloway left and right and frustrating him and making it impossible for him to actually have success. Once again, I know I'm going to get a lot of shit for this, but I just think it's a bad matchup for him, man. I really do. And also, even though we said the same thing about Alexander Volkanovski, that if Volkanovski moves up and fights Islam, he's going to be in a world of trouble because he hasn't fought any grapplers in the featherweight division. Merab is not just your average grappler. I'm not sitting here and saying that Evloev is going to beat Max Holloway because Max Holloway hasn't fought a grappler yet. I am saying this dude in Merab is not your typical grappler. He's basically just going to fling himself at you and just frustrate you and piss you off for 5 rounds. That's the issue with it. So, once again, I just think it's a rough matchup for Max. I don't see how he has a lot of success, and I don't see how he just holds Merab at reign. Ilia Topuria or Islam Makhachev for Volkanovski in 2024. Now, hear me out. Volkanovski would beat Ilia Topuria's ass if they were to fight right now. If they were to fight anytime soon or even this year, I'm picking Alexander Volkanovski to style on him. The issue is, we constantly talk about these champions that are in their mid-30s, that have been on top for a while. We think about them as, I can't wait till this guy gets this one, and then he moves up and he beats this guy and he beats that guy, and then they just start to come crashing down before any of that happens. And Volkanovski, people are talking about him, beating Yair and then beating Aljamain Sterling and then moving up to beat Islam and then maybe beating a guy like Dustin and beating a guy like Charles. It's like, he's not going to get all these wins. He's basically 35 years old. He's going to turn 35 in September. Before you know it, he'll be 36. And there hasn't been a single champion in these lighter weight classes that's 36. And I feel like I'm not going to bank on him being the only one to defy the odds. Eventually, it's going to come crashing down. And I just think if Volkanovski beats Yair, and if he gets past Aljamain Sterling, which he probably would, it's best to call it quits. Maybe you risk fighting Islam Makhachev one more time, but I would start to lean towards Islam Makhachev if we're talking about that fight being a year from now. If you were to do Volk and Islam in October, this October, I like Volkanovski's chances. But a year from now, a year makes a big difference when you're 35. You know what I mean? It makes a huge difference. And Ilia Topuria, again, I said Volkanovski would beat his ass right now. If Ilia destroys Josh Emmett and then gets another really impressive win and he continues to show improvements, that's the kind of guy that is going to be an issue for Volkanovski at 145 pounds. When Volkanovski is getting older and those weight cuts are starting to be more difficult every single time. Think about it like this. Volk just bulked up the lightweight. That weight cut that he's going to have against Yair is going to be the hardest one he's ever had, most likely. The weight cuts get harder. Your chin does not get better. Your speed is not going to get better. At some point, Volkanovski's not going to be at this peak anymore. And I just get worried for that in the future because, again, I'm a massive Volkanovski fan. I want him to retire when his legacy is solid and intact. And I feel like he's the kind of guy to just go way past his prime, to get finished, to get KO'd, and to want to bounce back right away. Then to get KO'd again, then want to bounce back right away because he's got that blue-collar work ethic, and it can be a double-edged sword for an older fighter. I just don't like the idea of Volkanovski's chances at being at the top of the game when he's 35, 36. I just don't. I think he's got another year max. So I hope he can prove me wrong because he's my favorite fighter. Leon Edwards is a nightmare matchup for Colby Covington. Think about it like this. Colby's best wins are over guys coming off of 2 losses each. Robbie Lawler was coming off of 2 losses, Woodley was coming off of 2 losses, and Jorge Masvidal was coming off of 2 losses and a devastating KO. Colby Covington has never made it look easy against someone that's actually really solid. Even a prime Colby Covington against RDA, to be fair, maybe he wasn't in the middle of his prime, but that was a 48-47. And guess who's a lot better than RDA? Leon Edwards. Guess who out-grappled RDA? Leon Edwards. And guess who Colby Covington's never fought? A long, rangy striker that can kick your legs to shreds. Who the fuck has tried to kick Colby's legs? And we just saw Leon Edwards deal with a guy that has a heavy pressure style, that can mix it up, that can wrestle, and has unreal cardio. Kamaru Usman. But all of a sudden, people are acting like Usman is completely different than Colby. He's such a different matchup. Oh yeah, such a different matchup than Colby Covington. That's a whole load of horseshit. Okay? He's got better striking than Colby Covington if you want to talk about the power, if you want to talk about the reach advantage. And of course, Colby might be the better grappler once it actually gets to the mat. But I just think that Leon Edwards has proven to be able to cut wrestlers off. When he's up against the cage, he has a plan for when wrestlers try to pressure him, and he's got really good lateral movement around the octagon. And I think he could evade that takedown from Colby, chop up his legs, slow Colby's movement down so that his takedown entries aren't as good, and just pick him apart at range on the feet. Leon Edwards has a really solid gas tank on him. He's got solid takedown defense. He's got a good ground game. And on the feet, he's a hard guy to pressure. He's a hard guy to get your hands on. And Colby Covington is going to get messed up on the feet, without a doubt. Also, Leon Edwards is like 4 years younger than Colby on top of that. Jailton Almeida and Tom Aspinall for Ciryl Gane. I don't think that Gane loses to every single grappler that there is. I'd pick him to beat a plotty guy like Curtis Blades that doesn't have fast and finesseful takedown entries. And I would do the same thing if he's fighting someone in Sergey Spivak. I'll be picking Gane to beat Spivak because Spivak is a fat, plotty heavyweight. And I think that Gane and his agility, his ability to move around when he's light on his feet, I think that'll be fine in those matchups. But against someone as fast twitch as Tom Aspinall, who can also knock you out, who has unreal speed with his takedown entries, or someone like Jailton Almeida that has that light heavyweight skill, that light heavyweight experience, and the ability to have, a submission over you like that, I just feel like both of these guys are running across the octagon, setting up a takedown, making it work, and just destroying Gane once it gets there. And Gane is still training in France. Like, he's training at one of the shittiest gyms around. And all that talent in the world isn't going to save you when you just don't have that mentality. And I don't think that Gane really cares that much about being the best fighter he could possibly be. I think he likes fighting, and I think he enjoys it a little bit. But I think that a lot of that comes from the benefits that he gets from being this big star in France. You know what I mean? Because France is like a very close-knit community and all that. And I feel like Gane just likes the clout that comes with it. And he likes beating up on these fat heavyweights that aren't that well-rounded. But when it comes to really getting gritty in the gym and putting in those hard rounds against the wrestlers and sparring against guys that are going to embarrass you every now and then, I don't think that Gane really likes that shit, man. I just don't. I mean, he's still training at this MMA factory. And I've said it time and time again. Look at what Francis was able to do once he left that gym in France. He was able to massively improve on his takedown defense, and he used that to beat Stipe Miocic, the guy that ragdolled him in their first fight. So I think a hungry man like Jailton Almeida and Tom Aspinall, who also have speed and finesse behind their takedown attempts, are going to put Gane on his back. And I just think that they'll show levels, and Gane will not be able to close the gap if he continues to train around mediocrity. Cory Sandhagen for Henry Cejudo. That's right. I think Cory Sandhagen would probably just beat up Henry Cejudo for 3 to 5 rounds. I do not think that Henry Cejudo is all that amazing on the feet. He just got outstruck by Aljamain Sterling, and Sterling is pretty good on the feet, but he sure as fuck is no Cory Sandhagen. Now, to be fair, you could make the argument that Cory Sandhagen's there to be taken down, but who has Henry Cejudo been able to really mess up on the ground? He doesn't have submissions. You know what I mean? He's not able to hurt people that badly down there. Of course, he beat up Marlon Moraes, but that's a known gasser. That's a guy that just wilted badly. And that's another short, guy that's kind of perfectly tailor-made for a Henry Cejudo. It's not the long, rangy, crafty striker that can also fuck you up and hurt you at range. And that's what Cory Sandhagen does so well. He hurts people badly, he messes their movement up, and he just out-damages them from a distance. Ever since his loss to Aljamain Sterling, he's made it a mission to not get embarrassed like that again. And I think his grappling would hold up, and the majority of this fight would take place on the feet, and we'd see Cory Sandhagen just out-damage Henry and fuck him up at range. And Henry Cejudo would be exposed as the glorified brawler that he is. He's a guy that bites down on the mouthpiece and has a little bit of a speed advantage. But now that he's 36, I don't think he could do the same thing. I think that the Cory Sandhagen-Henry Cejudo fight would be similar to the TJ Dillashaw fight. I think that Cory would just out-damage him and drop him a couple of times and just put a beating on him, to be honest. And I don't think Henry Cejudo would have an ability to submit Cory Sandhagen or to hold him down on the ground. I think Cory's really crafty down there as well. Alexander Volkanovski for Aljamain Sterling. I mean, this one is pretty obvious. I don't think that Aljamain Sterling is going to have a lot of advantages over Volkanovski. He has that one position, which is taking Volk's back and catching him in a scramble. But you're talking about the strength. Volkanovski's just freakishly strong. You're talking about the striking. Well, that reach advantage that Aljamain Sterling has over a lot of his opponents just goes right out the window because Volk has a reach advantage over him. Volk has one of the longer reaches in that featherweight division. We're talking about the power. Volk has that. We're talking about the speed. Volk has that. Now, of course, Aljamain Sterling is going to be pretty fast because he's coming from a lighter division. But I just think Volkanovski is just too much for him everywhere. You know, he has great takedown defense. He can get up to his feet. He's basically impossible to submit because he has no neck. I can't wait to see this matchup so that Alexander Volkanovski can get some free legacy. And then I will go to Australia to convince him to retire. All right, this is why I'm excited. This is going to be the best opportunity for Volk to solidify himself as a top 5 all-time guy. Think about it like this. You beat Yair Rodriguez, who is one of the most impressive strikers in the game. That's another great title defense to have. And then you defend your belt against a dominant champion in the bantamweight division. Again, if Aljamain Sterling beats Sean O'Malley, even though he's had a couple of split decisions, at that point, he would be a pretty dominant champion that's been reigning for some time now. And it's always great to have a win over another guy that's holding a belt. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.
It's summer, and that gives you no rhyme or reason to run around here looking like Sean O'Malley. And I understand, it's fun to fit through door cracks sometimes. But why not build the actual strength to just open the door? So if you're actually trying to pack on some mass, and if you're a beginner, you could check out my novice lifting program. I've personally designed these programs to help you guys put on as much muscle as possible without hitting plateaus. So check it out, guys. If you're interested, use code MMA for 30% off. The link is in my description.